Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here's your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of People in Fundraising. This podcast series spotlights people in the philanthropic industry, how they entered our field, their experiences that have helped them to grow as professionals and as people, and any personal or professional insights that have been helpful for them as they've grown in their career and what they bring to our profession and how they really enjoy their specific role in fundraising. You can find all recordings of the People in Fundraising podcast on our website, www.peopleinfundraising.com. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Tabatha Butler to our podcast. She is the Director of Development at Idaho State University. And just in terms of full disclosure, Tabitha and I did work for a period of time together at Salt Lake City-based Intermountain Healthcare Foundation. Tabitha, welcome to our podcast. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. If you could first share with our listeners specifically, a college, an initiative you're overseeing at Idaho State, where Idaho State is, how long you've been there, and then we can expand that to how you entered the fundraising field.
Absolutely. So I work for Idaho State University. I am the Director of Development for the College of Education and the Idaho Museum of Natural History that is on our campus here. It is in beautiful Pocatello, Idaho, which used to be a really well-kept secret, and with a lot of changes the last 2 years has been discovered. We are right in the valley of some incredible mountains and foothills, and I grew up here. I used to joke that I didn't realize I was an outdoors person until I moved away, just because being outdoors was so easy. So even when I lived in Montana for a couple years and people were like, oh, you have to travel 2.5 hours to ski, I was like, excuse me? I used to be able to go to a hill in less than 30 minutes. So we're in Pocatello. The university started in 1901 as a technical college. And it's just great to be back on a campus university. I'm really excited to be here.
Dynamite.
Yes.
And how long have you been working at Idaho State?
I am coming up on 1 year now. It's probably about 9 or 10 months that I've been here now.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's terrific. There is something special about being on a college campus. University settings are really cool.
They are amazing. There is just always this sense of hope that I think students bring on campus, because it's an exciting change in their life and they're excited about what comes next. And I think it's just very contagious, and you feel that everywhere, especially this last year where we've had students on campus. And we have just recently removed our mask mandate unless CDC guidelines change, will be out. And that has really, people are just so excited to be on campus. And I love that energy.
That's wonderful. And I've been to your campus recently because my wife was born in Pocatello, and Tabitha was kind to give me a brief tour of some parts of campus. And yeah, it is a beautiful setting.
Mm-hmm. We are very lucky.
So Tabitha, if you wouldn't mind, just share with our listeners how you entered the fundraising industry. A lot of people come to it through different paths, obviously. And how did you hear about fundraising as a career path, and what about it kind of sparked an interest, and then how you proceeded to where you are today?
Sure. So like many fundraisers, it's been an interesting career path. When I was in college, there was not a course on how to raise money for a nonprofit institution. Now there are,
Mhm.
but I actually have 2 degrees in history, and my whole dream was to work in museums, and I got to fulfill that dream. I got to be a director and a curator of a small county museum. I got to work for other museums when I lived in Montana. I loved it, but as my career progressed and I worked with different nonprofits, there was always a need for someone who was brave enough to ask for money. And I was like, "Oh, I'll do it. Why not?" So every job I've had in my career has really been in the nonprofit sector. And it was always a part of what my job was fundraising. And then for a couple years when I lived in Montana, I actually had the opportunity to work for a foundation that gave out money. And that was a phenomenal experience because I got to sit on the other side of the table and understand what the family and the bank I worked for were looking for when they were trying to give out their money, and questions that they wanted to have answered and how they liked to be approached. Which was super valuable and also a really fun job to help someone give out their profits to their community.
Sure. Yes.
And then when I lived in Utah, working for Intermountain Healthcare, where you and I worked together, that was the first time that my whole job was fundraising. And
Okay.
multiple aspects of it where I was doing like program management and fundraising, where it was just my sole job. And I really, really enjoyed it. As you know, and we both agree, Intermountain is an incredible company to work for. They do incredible work, and it was just a perfect fit. Like I said, it wasn't a position or a course that was offered in college.
Sure.
But it was like, all you have to do is talk to people all day and find out what their interests are. And be like, I want that job. So I worked for Intermountain. I started in annual giving and then progressed up to a major gift officer for corporations and foundations. And then I was reached out to by a colleague here at Idaho State University who said, "Hey, I know you want to come back home. There's an opportunity if you're interested." And I was, and now I get to talk to alumni that I am also an alumnus, and it's an incredible job. But that's a very long, twisted story of how I landed in this position.
Oh, that's terrific. Thank you, Tabitha. And I wasn't aware that you are an alum of Idaho State. So talk to me a little bit about what that means for you professionally to now be raising funds and raising engagement and awareness for Idaho State as an alum.
Yeah, I think one of the key things as a fundraiser is you have to be really connected to the impact. And when I worked in nonprofits before, I was always kind of on that impact side. I was doing the work, I was in the trenches, and I could see that impact. And it's always a good reminder to me as a fundraiser now how I should have connected maybe our development officers more into what I was doing, because I feel like it's easy as an alumnus to be very impact driven because I know what an impact this school had on me. And I go and I can see those stories. I do come to campus regularly. I'm in my building to see my college students that are here and taking that to our donors. And it's fun because we can reminisce, right? Like about things on campus or our favorite things in Pocatello. I'm sure you're aware because of your wife. There's a great Italian restaurant here called Buddy's that everyone goes to. And I was having lunch with some alumni last summer, and I was asking them about their degrees. And they were sisters, and the one sister said, "Well, I majored in finance, but I minored at Beers and Buddies." And I was like, "What? What was that minor?" But that connection to our community, but also the impact of our students and making that this institution available to everyone. We're very focused on scholarships here. So it's a lot of fun to be an alumni and work for the institution.
I bet. That's awesome. And do most Idaho State alumni live in the greater Pocatello or Idaho Intermountain West area?
There are a lot, especially from my college. However, they're all also across the country. We did a spread through our database, we use Razor's Edge NXT, where you can really see that map where everyone lives. And we have a big group in Texas, of all places, and in the South. In fact, I had someone just reach out to me in December that's from Kansas. And so I will get to, as travel opens up a little bit more, go travel and see. And that's a really fun thing to see, right? Like, they came here, why did they come here? And then why they ended up where they did, and how advantageous their degree was to them in all parts of the country.
That's wonderful. That's got to be very fulfilling for you and for them.
It really is. My job is so fun. I can't say that enough. I feel lucky. There are days, and my dean, I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this, she's the new dean, first time dean, and we say, like, this is what we get to do every day. This is so cool that this is what we get to do every single day.
That's a great mindset. I like that. And speaking of, every day and the work you're doing, before we went live with this podcast, Tabitha and I were just catching up a little bit, and she made a really good point about this current environment of the COVID and hybrid work, and some of our other interviewees for this podcast will be working full-time remotely. So Tabitha, if you could just reiterate what that experience has been for you in terms of working at institutions before the pandemic, where there was an emphasis on being in the office, but what you've benefited from a little looser structure.
Yeah, it's amazing. I loved working for Intermountain Healthcare. I have nothing but wonderful things to say about them. I was commuting an hour and 15 minutes both ways when I needed to go down to our Salt Lake office. And when the pandemic hit, we all went home immediately. And suddenly there was this huge, this availability of time that I didn't feel like I understood the value of until it was rewarded back to me. So it was interesting because, it was just how things were done, and I was accustomed to having a commute, and then seeing the value of that time and that break that it gave me from work, and how much I valued that as a luxury. And it was important to me. I also shared with you, my current commute is less than a radio song to get to work right now. And that was a big deal to me. After getting that and that availability of time to me, I realized how important my personal time was to me, and that I needed to find a position that was going to allow for that freedom of time. Not that the Intermountain doesn't offer that now with remote and hybrid work. But when I was offered this position, I really thought about how that was going to look and what that was going to look like on my time, because I'm not willing to commute an hour and 15 minutes anymore.
Sure, I don't blame you. Well, I'm glad for your situation now. That's very beneficial for you. So that's terrific.
I love it. Although I do like to listen to a whole song to completion.
So Tabitha, as you reflect on, where you are and how you got to where you are today, back at your alma mater, can you share any insights into experiences going from kind of a hybrid role with fundraising at the museums and programmatic components to then full-time dedicated annual giving, and now to where you are as a development director at Idaho State? Anything that you look back on and say, it was hard at the time to go through that, but here's what I've learned?
Yeah, it's interesting when you tell people you're a fundraiser, they're like, oh, I could never do that, right? Like, they're instantly terrified. And I was recently watching a movie, and the person, does this explosive presentation and asks someone they've never known for $100,000 and convinces them. And it made me laugh, because I think that, since that's what Hollywood portrays, right? That's
Sure.
how people assume I am doing my job, right? And as someone not trained in how to do development work, which when I was doing those hybrid positions, there wasn't time to be trained in just solely that. I was also working on other impact. That was kind of the approach, right? And then to Intermountain's credit, they really focus on education and how there's a process to this. And one of our colleagues, Rebecca, really shared that, really fundraising is program management. There's each step of this to get to a relationship where someone trusts you. And then you don't even make a solicitation at that point, but you present ideas to them. My job is really listening to people and finding out what their interests are and then plugging that into where they fit at the university. They don't take my phone call if they're not interested in our university. If their experience was bad, they don't take my phone call, and that's okay.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
And we find this, especially with the College of Education, some of my donors, they don't even teach anymore. They've gone on different career paths, but their experience here was so valuable to them. They want to give back to other teachers, but it's key to listening. And a lot of the training I received is that listening and the process. And it's not what you see in Hollywood. And it's a really fun and enjoyable process. By the time I do get to the solicitation, they already know it's coming. They've already kind of made up their mind. The numbers are probably just a little bit different and there's some negotiating, but it's not what I think a lot of people think in their head fundraising is.
Yeah, that is for sure. That's a great way to illustrate listening and then trying to identify ways that what the prospect or donor is sharing with you, how those interests can tie with the institutional needs.
Yeah, I have a colleague of mine up here who works for a different foundation, and I like his title better than my title, and it's philanthropic advisor. And I like that approach because I really do get to have great conversations, and I'm just advising people who have genuine interest in giving back to their university. They just want to know what their options are for giving back, and that would matter most to them. For some people, it's scholarships. That always seems to be the obvious one, but we have other programs happening, and I support the museum, so there's exhibits they could do. We do a lot with maker spaces and 3D printing, and there are other opportunities that they're just not aware of.
Sure. So just educational awareness is big part of your job too. Nice. Have there been people, Tabitha, along your path that have been in particular helpful? You mentioned our Intermountain colleague Rebecca, but in addition to her, are there others that you maybe mentor or some other way?
So when we worked there, we were a part of AHP, the Association of Healthcare Philanthropy. And within that program, they had a mentorship program that you could sign up for. And I signed up for that and worked with Jolene Francis, who is his head of marketing and VP of advancement, and Enlo Healthcare in Chico, California. Her and I have never met in person, but met once a month over Zoom, and she was amazing. I at the time I signed up for this program was just in annual giving, and really thought I only wanted to do annual giving. And so I was trying to pick someone to be my mentor who would help with that. And I think it was our first meeting. She was like, absolutely not. You are going to be a major gift officer. And I was terrified, and she was so incredible. And my last month at Intermountain, she said, I was like, well, I guess this is it. And she's like, no, it doesn't have to be. And so to this day, I still meet with her once a month, and she has been absolutely amazing mentor. I mentioned Rebecca and Danielle Marzelli, who was my supervisor, all saw this potential for me to be a major gift officer that I was really terrified of taking that next step to do. And felt like I could do that. And now that I am in that position, they were all so right. That's
awesome.
I love what I do. I get to be out and meeting with people a lot more than an annual giving officer does. But they were all right and very helpful in guiding me to the path that I'm in right now.
Well, as you were talking, Tabitha, I feel like that's a twofold win. It validated what these mentors and colleagues saw in you. And I imagine also gives you, that added boost and confidence to say, yeah, on your hardest days, yes, I can do this and I'm good at it and I want to keep growing. So that's awesome.
Yes, they've been great. And that is very helpful on those hard days because it can be a pretty steep decline on the roller coaster some days in this job, and some days the highs are really amazing. But it's helpful to have those mentors there when they're like, no, this is a part of the game. One of the greatest things that Jolene told me, especially coming over to this job, is that you need to measure your success differently. Because as an annual giving officer, there's a quicker turnaround with donations. And in this work, it takes time. And so she said, your success needs to be that you got the meeting, that you had a great meeting. And that has been really helpful to avoid those emotional roller coaster days of like, no, this was accomplished. So she's been,
Oh, terrific. Have you had opportunities yourself to mentor younger colleagues or people who are new to fundraising? Or if you don't yet, what would you take from your experience as a mentee in those opportunities in the future?
I hope that they are enjoying my mentorship, but I always like to look for other women in the field to support and bring to the table and let them know that they have a seat at the table and that they should be heard at the table. And see what that future could be for them. I have a colleague right now who has started out as an assistant here at the university that I have really been pushing to say, well, if you're interested, why don't you come shadow one of us as a development officer? Because you can shadow our stewardship officer. There's so much opportunity within the fundraising field. Go find what you like and find out what's interested. And I think, taking back from my mentorships, giving someone the confidence that they can do this work. And telling them like, no, you are completely capable. Let me show you how. But yes, I love to mentor people. I don't know if my mentees love it as much, but I get so excited.
I'm sure you're doing great. Thank you for sharing that. As you reflect on, again, your journey here, are there things that you now know or are aware of that you didn't, earlier in your career that, in hindsight would have been helpful for you as you were charting a course with mentors and just day-to-day colleagues to help you perhaps more quickly identify what you're really passionate about in fundraising or institutional fit, things like that?
Yeah, I think coming back to the conversation of mentoring others, shadowing people is incredibly helpful, right? And talking through, I was sharing this even before, like I'm a very social person. I have to talk through things and to be in those rooms to watch how solicitations are done or how relationships are being built is very helpful. Because you do a lot of this work solo and it's kind of like, am I doing this right? Is this correct? And so I really feel like, and I've always said this about even college before getting back to working in the collegiate field, how important internships are for you to actually see if this is a fit for what I want to do. It kind of helps that like, oh, is it too late? Like, no, this is no, this isn't what it is. But I mean, and before I really got into the fundraising field full throttle, like had no idea that there were so many different things. I love what you do, what you and your team does, prospect and data management. That's fascinating to me. I have to get out of the office and talk to people though.
Sure.
If the last 2 years has taught me anything, being alone in my house is not where I belong. But also gives me this incredible empathy for people who are introverted and how difficult it must have been to be in an extroverted workplace, right? Our workplace
Interesting.
are really built for extroverts, and that must be incredibly difficult to someone who doesn't want to be interrupted by me every 5 minutes because I've an idea that I need to socialize past them, you know? And so I think this new work world where we have those hybrid work models or work from home available for people really helps to accommodate people who need that space and are hyper focused. And I think I've really gone off track with whatever the original question was. But
no, that's okay. This is more free-flowing conversation than anything, and so that's totally fine.
This is how my brain works. Welcome to it.
But and getting back to us working together, I was very impressed. And you know this anecdote, working together at Intermountain Foundation, there was a time when we were in the same office one morning and you were making qualification calls to lapsed donors or non-donors who maybe had attended an Intermountain healthcare event. And I was very struck in a positive way with the comfort, the ease that you verbalized on the phone to these donors and potential donors. And also there may have been people that you were trying to reconnect with who had been lapsed donors. So do you remember that
I do. Moment? I do remember that because it was a quiet day in the office and I was so excited someone else was there because remember I like extroversion. I remember that. And I remember also, and it was so helpful because I do love feedback. People are sometimes concerned about like if they'll hurt someone's feelings. And I poked my head into the conference room where you were and was like, do you have any feedback? And you had a great suggestion and something I need to practice, especially as someone who interrupts with ideas constantly, of asking them if they had a few moments, which is something I still implement to this day. Like, is right now a good time to chat? Which a lot of people appreciate because I talk to some very, very busy people who may be running into meetings, but we're still kind enough to take my call and schedule a time for me to meet with them otherwise. To that point, I worked in a call center to pay my way through college here at Idaho State University, and it was an inbound call center. So I really have no fear with the phone because no one will be as mean to me as they were when I worked for a call center.
Sure.
There's no one who especially with a connection with our healthcare system that is incredible, or our alma mater, like they'll just ignore the call. They're not going to pick up the phone and say anything terrible. So I think I have that confidence thanks to paying my way through college.
That's dynamite. It's a good lesson learned, good experience.
Yes. And that story too, I just appreciated working with you so much. You were such an advocate for me. I was working in a different office and you even brought that to the attention of down to the Salt Lake office and thought it would be a great idea for me to present in one of our meetings to talk about my qualification process. And I just really appreciate you making a seat at the table for me and having my voice be heard when I didn't even know that table existed. So I really appreciate that.
Well, that means a lot. Thank you. I like other people you've mentioned, mentors and others that saw professional qualities in you. I'm just honored that I had that opportunity to be in that conference room that day, and was again very impressed with your approach to qualifying donors and prospects. And I'm glad that you had that opportunity to present to the major gift officers at the time. That was a good opportunity for you. So you grabbed it by the horns and ran with it.
Thank you. Well, I wouldn't have been able to had you not suggested it. So I appreciate that.
it's a partnership, right? We're all working together, not just on day-to-day tasks, but things that I think can be professionally beneficial in the microcosm as well.
It's so helpful for those reminders. I feel like, I feel like I've learned a lot, but as you're writing the proposal, there are pieces that you can forget. I'm doing a really big proposal right now for an exhibit at our museum, and I had it all written out, and I took it to another former development officer to get feedback on. And she was like, well, where's your investment in the project? And I was like, of course, I always include that. But I had, got so into the details, which is why it's so good to bring your colleagues in and talk with other people and have someone put a fresh pair of eyes on it that's like, well, you need to include this piece.
That's very helpful insight. Terrific. Tabitha, we've spent, I think, a very beneficial amount of time talking about how you started and got into fundraising and the experiences you've had, the mentorships, the people that have helped you, and the confidence you bring where you are now. If you could look forward, what do you hope for yourself for the rest of this year? We're recording this in early March of 2022. So if you want to pivot from looking back to where you are now to projecting forward, what would you hope at the end of this year that you have learned or developed in your professional career?
This is going to probably be a surprise answer.
Okay.
I use all my vacation.
Awesome.
I love my job, and I work usually about 6 days a week on a regular basis in evenings and morning things, and I have currently almost a month of vacation already collected, and I can feel myself heading towards burnout. And so I am purposely, and I have tried very hard to be protective of, I'm taking spring break. My partner teaches here at ISU too, so that is when he will be off. And I may not have plans to go anywhere, but to make sure that I'm taking my vacation and taking time for me, because I know when I do that, I come back with even more energy than I thought I had before. And that allows this to stay exciting for me, not to head towards burnout. Talking about the last 2 years and even the time commuting, like how fast that can throw you to a place where you're unhappy with your job. And I love what I get to do every single day, which is great, but I also need a break from it to keep it exciting. And also give me an outside perspective, because my donors don't just want to talk about the university. They want to talk about what I do to recreate, because a lot of our people that came to Idaho State University came because of the outdoors.
Oh, yes.
And they want to know where I've been skiing and where I've been hiking and if I've gone anywhere cool. And so, it's hard to relate to someone if they're a workaholic and they're like, I've been to every chamber event for the last 6 weeks, And I think what that will give me for the year is actually a better return on investment for the work that I do on a daily basis. I have been very lucky, I think, due in part to how well the economy is also doing right now. A lot of people, and to the credit of the development officer before me, she had created and cultivated great relationships that I was able to step into. And what I see from a year from now is that I am still exceeding everyone's expectations on what this college and the museum can raise. I love a good underdog story, and so I love being the one to prove to everyone the potential and the amazingness that both my college and my museum on campus bring to this community and everywhere else.
Oh, that's great. That's inspiring. I like that answer, Tabitha. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I need to take a vacation. That's what
I And when is spring break for Idaho State? It's gotta be soon.
Yes, it's going to be the last full week of March, I believe. So
Okay.
I'm in Boise next week for work. Our women's basketball team is looking to be the Big Sky champions. So
Okay, dynamite.
and then I have a week of work after that. And then I think I'm going to go see if I can find some more snow on the mountains in Montana to ski on.
Dynamite. I wish you a great and restful and fun recreational vacation. You deserve it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was great to reconnect with you, Tabitha. I appreciate your time today, and I know our listeners can benefit from your professional anecdotes, the mentorship opportunities that you've taken great part in, as well as talking through how you've pivoted from kind of a hybrid role to where you are now. And I also enjoyed hearing about your newfound, and for a lot of us, it's newfound, emphasis on kind of whole person wellness, balancing career and personal life and our interests. That's terrific as well. And I think there's a lot of good content from you today. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And before we sign off, just want to put a plug that you can, as a listener, find Tabitha's podcast interview, as well as all of our other interviews with people in fundraising on our website, peopleinfundraising.com. It's a simple name, but we are hopefully providing a lot of engaging stories with professional insights and people bringing their personalities to these sessions as well. So just as Tabitha did today, thank you so much.
Thanks. It was so much fun to do.
All right, we'll see you soon.
All right.